Okay, so this is going to be a continuation of 6.4. If you'll notice, 6.4 is divided into two different parts for the homework assignments. So part 1 is you translate and then you do a long truth table. Part 2, they give it to you translated and then you do a long truth table. So I want to go over some longer translations for you, and we also need to go over how do you find a conclusion. So if you look in your book on page 3, there's actually conclusion and premise indicators listed for you. And if you'll notice, the word for is a premise indicator, okay? So for this one right here, we already know that for Al Pacino signed a film contract with a Hollywood company, provided he doesn't resent living in LA, that's going to be a premise. And the word but here tells me that they're continuing on with the next premise. So that tells me that this is my conclusion. So conclusions can be at the beginning, they can be at the middle, they can be at the end. It's be a beautiful world if we always said therefore, which your book actually does say therefore. But I want you to be aware of the fact that conclusions are not always neat and pretty that way, okay? So next thing you want to do is we need to start finding our simple propositions. So we have Al Pacino is not signing a film contract with a Hollywood company. Okay, that's just a simple proposition. It's either he's going to sign it or he's not going to sign it. So for that one, we can really just use S for signing it. Okay? And you'll see that you just put it above it and you can tell where it belongs. Al Pacino is signing a film contract with a company. Okay, that's going to be another S. Same simple proposition. Provided he doesn't resent living. Okay, so we're going to have to do an R, whether he does resent or does not. So that's a complex statement. And Al Pacino resents living in LA. Same simple proposition, so we've got to use the same capital letter. Okay, now that we got those outlined, now we need to go do connectors and do our negations as well. So we have the word not, so we know tilde. Al Pacino is signing a film contract with a Hollywood company. Okay, provided, and that's going to be a horseshoe. And doesn't, that's going to be a tilde. And then the last one is Al Pacino resents living in LA. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is we need to put it in argument form, and we also always got to be aware, whenever you have a horseshoe, you got to make certain you have your antecedent and you have your consequent, okay? So this is our conclusion, so we're not going to put that one down yet. And now we have to ask, the word provided, is that going to read straight across, or do you need to flip it? You need to flip it. So when you translate this out, it'll be not R comes first, then your horseshoe, and then S. Because this is saying Al Pacino signed a film contract with a Hollywood company, provided he doesn't resent living in LA. What that means is, if he doesn't resent living in LA, then he's going to sign the contract. Okay? So the other parts of this, not R, S, then we have R here. And then our line tells us, there's our conclusion. So this in English looks like this. And in propositional language, this is what it should look like. Okay, now we move on and we're going to do our truth table for it. And it's a little one, so not too bad. So let's go ahead and do our not R here. So we'll do F, T, T. And I'm assuming you watched the other video that came first, okay? Now, we need to take the not R column and combine it with the S column. And be careful, because you've got to go from this one over to this one. So don't read it the wrong way. So this is if false then true, which is true. If false then false, true. If true then true, true. If true then false, false. And again, I'm just using that as a guide. Okay, we got R, which is nothing's going to change. It's just going to be T, T, F, F. Just take the R, and I just copied it down. And then S, I just need to flip it because of that negation. So it'll be F, T, F, T. All right, just kind of clean this up just a little bit. And now we're doing that last step. So we are looking for premise to be true, premise to be true, and a conclusion to be false. And why did I put a C? I don't know. Okay, so we have a false here, and we have a false here. And then, bam, true, true, false. So when we find that, we know the argument is invalid. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, oops, blank page. Okay, first thing, find the conclusion. And this one's pretty straightforward, the word thus. Thus tells us there's our conclusion. Okay, let's do simple propositions. So we have Dr. Landenberg is a popular professor. Okay, let's just do L for Landenberg. He cares about his students. Okay, so cares. He cares about his students. Gotta use the same one. If and only if both he and... Okay, we got a new one. Their problems and delivers good lectures. So we got cares about... Oh, nope, that's not right. So we got it cares about his students. So that's the C. Empathizes and delivers good lectures. Okay. Now the next part is we need to start putting in our connectors. So the word if tells us this is an antecedent, then tells us this is a consequent. So we can just put a horseshoe between those two. Simple enough. But, by the way, when the word but is at the beginning of a sentence, it is not a dot. Okay? It's not a dot because it's simply saying here's another premise. Okay, he cares about his students if and only if, so that's going to be a triple bar. He both, and that both right there tells me I'm going to have to put parentheses around. The and tells me a dot. Okay, we have an either, C, or, so we have a wedge, or both, and that tells me I need parentheses, and then the and is a dot. So we end up with L to C, C, triple bar, E dot D, our line, C, or, E dot D. So again, this one is in English, this one is in propositional language. Okay, and I'm going to be honest, this one I kind of cheated because, as you can see, we end up with 1, 2, 3, 4 simple statements. So it's 16 lines. It's a big one. There's no way I was going to get through this, so I went ahead and did it on the computer. You'll see I just looked at the L and the C, brought it together with the horseshoe. This one you do the E dot D first. That's all in the green right here. Combine it with the C. The C, I just literally copied it down. And then again, if it's the same with the triple bar, if it's the same, it's true. If it's different, it's going to be false. The end here, again, do E dot D first, bring it together with the C, and then the last step is always the same, and this one's pretty straightforward. So you want a false conclusion, so I always start with the conclusion over here. So we have a false, and then when I look at this one, I see they're all true, so this line right here tells me it's invalid. and obviously you can pause this and look at it as long as you want. I'll even erase all this so that when you pause it, you won't have all this. But yeah, I cheated. Okay. Let's go on to the next one. So we have, if Elaine lives in a mansion, then she either got it as a heritage or she acquired it herself. It is not that both. She got it as heritage and she acquired it herself. Therefore, she doesn't live in a mansion. Boom, we already got our conclusion right there. So let's go for our simple propositions. So we have Elaine lives in a mansion. She either got it out of heritage or she acquired it herself. Okay, it is not true that both. She got it out of heritage and she acquired it. Therefore, she doesn't live in a mansion. Okay, so I'm just looking at the simple statements, and if they're the same, I'm just using the same capital letter. That's all I'm doing there. Now I go back and I look for my keywords. Okay, we have an if-then. I know that's a horseshoe. And then we have an or, so I know that one's going to be a wedge. And then I want to look at it and ask, where do my parentheses go? Because I have two or more simple propositions. So it says, if this happens, then all of that happens. Okay, that tells me that's where my parentheses go. Then it says, it is not true that both. Okay, that's going to tell me I need to have let's get rid of that. That's going to interfere. So that tells me I need to have a tilde, and I need to put parentheses around it, and that and right there tells me it's a dot. So again, the words here, it is not true that both, that tells me tilde, parentheses around it. And then it says, therefore, she does not live in a mansion. I know I'm going to need a tilde. And then, just to make it so it's a little bit cleaner for you to see, all I'm doing is copying it down, guys. Nothing special here. Okay? So as you can see, the way I work everything out is pretty straightforward. I just go look for my simple propositions, capital letter, and then I go back and I look for my negations and my connectors. And again, this is in English. This is in propositional language. Okay? This one will work out together. This will probably be this will be the last large truth table that we'll do. And then the next lecture will be on how to do shortcuts. However, for the exam, you will need to know how to do both of them. Okay? So we have our argument. I got it all outlined and ready to go. So let's start working it out. So we have M over here, and M is right next to it. I don't see why I would need to copy that down. So H or A, let's work on that right there. So we have H here, and we have A here. I think we can just look over there and do this. So we can have true, 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 false. And again, I'm just looking at the H column right here, the A column right here, and I'm bringing them together with the wedge, and of course, I'm just looking right there. Okay? Now I'm going to do the M column, and I'm going to bring it together with this column right here. So I'm looking right here, and I'm looking right here. So T to T is true, 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 true to false is false, and false to false is true. Okay, so the only time you ever get a false with a horseshoe is if true, then false. And that's usually the only one I care about, because that's the only one that makes it false. Okay. All right, done with that one. Let's move on to the next premise. So this one we need to do H dot A together and then negate everything. So we'll do H dot A. We'll just look over here. So we got true and true, true, true and true, true, false, 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 and then my little trick. And you'll see that when you do longer ones, this is very needed. Okay, and now that we have h dot a done, so everything inside the parentheses, we'll just take everything and negate it. So whatever is true will become false, whatever false will become true. Okay, and now for the last line, it's just not M, so I'm just going to look at the M column and flip it. Okay, and this last step, same as always, we're going to look at the falses. That's the only lines we care about. And then we're going to see, are the premises true and the conclusion false. So let's start at the bottom here. We got a false, we got a true, nope, didn't work. Okay, we got a false, we got a true, we got a true. Okay, we got it. Now that line tells me invalid. Okay, so next lecture will be short or indirect truth tables, and I'm gonna have to warn you, the only way you're gonna be able to understand these is if you understand this right here and also memorize it. Okay. If you have any questions, please email me and I will try to help you out as best I can.